Hello everyone, welcome to this introductory lecture on Python. So in this lecture I will introduce you with the Python programming and show you some basic examples. This will be overall what I will be covering in this short tutorial. So we will talk about some decision and control loop in Python. We will look at some basic data types in Python. We will look at how you can define a function or a class in Python, and also how you can write and read from files in Python. So Python was introduced in 1990s, so it's quite a while when the Python was introduced by Guido van Rossum. When you write your Python code, usually you save it as a .py extension. And Python is a very high-level language, which is also a general purpose programming language. So what I mean by high level is the way or the language you use to code in Python is very similar to what we use in our daily life. So the vocabulary is close to our language or the language we speak. There are many reasons that why Python is so popular. And first and foremost is very simple and easy to learn. Obviously, it's also free and open source, so anyone can get the Python and free and start programming. It's a high-level language, as I mentioned, and another benefit of Python is that it's a portable, so you can write your program in a Mac or in a Windows, and you can execute that program in a Linux machine, for example. Due to these many good benefits, there are big players in the IT domain or in this era of massive scale computing, like Google, NASA, Facebook, Yahoo, YouTube, Netflix, all are using Python because it's also a popular language among the service providers. So to get started with Python, you need to have at least the latest version of the Python downloaded and installed in your machine. Then you can use any other text editor or IDE to write and execute Python code. But for this tutorial, I will be using Jupyter Notebook, which you can download from this link, anaconda.com/distribution, and then you can install the Anaconda. I already installed it on my machine, and now I will start it. So when you install an Anaconda and launch the Anaconda navigator, you will see a number of applications that you can use. There are many very useful, some of the useful applications, but we will use this Jupyter Notebook. So you launch this one, and as soon as you launch the Jupyter Notebook, you will see a client browser in your localhost that started. And all you need to do is just click on New and then Python 3 Notebook. So now you got an actual environment where you can start programming. So just to test if my environment is up and running, for example, I want to add two numbers. So this is my input line, where I'm providing the code or any instructions, and as soon as I either hit the run button or this run button, it will show me the output of that instruction. So 2 plus 3 is obviously 5. In this way, you can directly provide any instructions that will be regarded as a Python command, but you can also write some basic Python commands in your input line. For example, if I want to print a message, I have to use a print command, and within this print command I will give the message that I want to show. For example, the first message is the hello world, and when I run it, it will show me the output. So this is the basic print message or print command that we will use frequently, also in your projects and so on. Python can be useful when you need also variables. So you know what is the variable, right? So a variable is a placeholder or some names in which or to which you can assign some values. It can be a numeric value, it can be a string value, or so on. So for example, I have this variable called age, and let's say I have assigned this 40 to this age variable, and then the value of 40 is not yet assigned to age, so I have to execute these instructions or this code. So as soon as I hit the run, the age variable got this value 40. So now if you type age and hit the run button, you can see that you will get the value as 40. In the same way, you can print the age as like this. So you write the print command and then you type age within the bracket, it will give you the same value. In this case, you are not using the inverted comma, because if you use the inverted comma, it will be regarded as a string, and if you write in this way, it will simply give you the string. So it's not the right answer. What's correct is this. In the same way, we can also assign strings to variables. For example, I can assign a variable I can create a variable called name and assign a string value to that name. So now the name variable will hold the value called David. So if I print the name variable, it will give me David, right? Until now, you assigned values to variables. For example, this is a number which is an integer number, so it does not have any fraction. This is a string. It is basically an alphabetical value. It is not a numeric that was assigned to another variables. And then you can also assign, for example, fraction number. So let's say the salary of David is $5,095. So $5,000.95. So now if we execute this, our salary will be, the value of the salary variable will be this fraction number or floating number. one thing that we can also do, we can not only print our variables, we can add some customized text along with our variables. For example, let's say we can say his name is then plus sign is name, and David or name is 40 years old. So now if I print this, or I can say even my name is David and I am, so we can say my name is David and I am 40 years old. So if I run this code, as you can see, it's giving me an error. So why it's giving me an error? It says that I can only concatenate string to string, not integer to string. So the reason behind is that this name variable was a string, right? So I am concatenating string to string, but then this age variable, this was an integer, it was not a string, so it was a numeric value, and I am concatenating this numeric value with here, one string here and another string there. To resolve this issue, what we can do, we can convert this age value or this age numeric variable to a string value. So we simply add a string method or function which will convert our age variable or the value of age variable to a string one. So if I now run it, you can see it says my name is David and I am 40 years old. So in this way, we can assign values to variables, we can print customized messages along with our variables, and we can concatenate multiple variables to into a one statement. Right? There are many Python keywords. Maybe we will show some of the keywords in this tutorial. For example, if we are going to use a loop is a command that will iterate some of the statements or code under that loop. So for example, we have while loop, we have for loop, and so on. And another thing that I can also mention, when we are giving in the name of a variable, there are some rules for giving the names. For example, you cannot use any special characters with your names. So let's say we define a new variable called address, and the address, let's say, is a string variable, Kalmar, Sweden. But if this address variable has a, let's say, $sign in it, or any other symbols in it. Let's say hashtag. Hashtag definitely is not working, so let's say it has an ampersand. You will see it will not work because we provided the wrong name for the variable, or in this case the name of the identifier. And even if we give a variable name with a exclamation sign, let's say, it will give us the same error because it says invalid syntax. So one exception is that you can have underscore as your variable name or as an identifier. So now if I run this, it's a success because you can add underscore to anywhere, to any places within the identifier or with the variable names. So now if I print this value, it will print me the address or correct value of the variable. And another thing that, as I mentioned, there are many keywords or tokens in Python. For example, if you are using the loop, there is a while loop or for loop. So if I want to use while as a variable name, let's say I can give any name to any any value to this variable. It will also not work because it will say that invalid syntax, because you cannot use Python tokens or identifiers as a variable name. And as you can see also, usually Python tokens or identifiers that are specific to Python are highlighted in a bold green. So when it's highlighted as a bold green, that means you cannot use it as a variable name or as an identifier. Another rule is that Python is case sensitive. So here I had this address variable, but if I take the same address variable with a bigger capital A in the beginning and assign to this let's say another address, Toronto, Canada, and run this, now I have, although they look similar, but since I have small letter here and capital letter here, the values will be not the same. So now if I print the other value, it will still give me the previous address. So what I wanted to say here is Python is case sensitive. So two names with different cases represent different variables, or can represent different variables. Another one last rule is that although as I say, this is an identifier or this is a variable name, they can start with the underscore, and usually we don't put underscore in the beginning, maybe in the middle, but this underscore can be at any position. For example, I can have the same variable address but having the underscore in the beginning, and I can assign a value to it. So if I run it, it will run successfully because, as I said, the rule says you can have underscores even in the beginning. And now if I want to print it, I get the correct value. But one exception to that is you can have a variable that has digits in the middle, right? And then you can assign a value to it. It will run successfully, and if you print the value, it will show that it's length. But if you have the same digits in front of the variable, it will not allow you to do this. So now it will say that there is a invalid syntax, because you can use digits in the middle of the variables or identifier names, but not in front of. And again, as you can see, they get different colors when you use them in the beginning of an identifier name. So these are the basic rules for naming your variables or identifiers, which will be useful also for your Python programming. There are many Python operators also. In general, we use arithmetic operators, assignment operators, comparison operators, and then there are logical operators. For example, arithmetic operator are simply if we want to perform some operations, let's say 7 minus 2, it's a arithmetic operation. You can also perform some assignment. So we used here the equal sign. This is basically an assignment operator. So for example, I assign a value to a, that is a equals to 10. So using this equal operator or assignment operator, we are giving this value of 10 to a. Then there is other assignment operators also. So for example, a plus equals to 10. So this assignment operator, what it will do is add 10 to this to the value of a, and then assign to it. So we had this value of a as 10. So if we run this one, we see a equals to 10. Now if we run this one, you will see that the value of a will be 20. So now if I run print the value of a, it will give me 20. So similarly, there are other assignment operators like a minus equals to 10. So now it will come back to 10, because the current value of 10 a was 20, and now we are subtracting 10 from 20 and then assigning to a. So if I run this one and then print the value of a, it will give me 10 back, 10 again. So these are known as assignment operators. And then there are also comparison operators. So we want to check, for example, let's say we have a variable called b, and we assign the value or any random value, for example 7, and we want to check if a is equals to b. And if we do that, it will give me a false, because a was 10 and b was 7. But if we do another test, if a b not equals to if a not equals to b, then it will give me true, because a and b are not equal. So this is true. So in this way, we can do other comparisons like less than or greater than. For example, we can write if a greater than b, and then it should be like this, and then print a is higher, and then else print b is higher. So now if we run this, we can see that A is higher because the value of A was 10 and the value of B was 7. So in the output is A is higher because it checks this comparison, and since this is true, it goes into this block and it prints this one. If this was the other case, then it will go in the else block and print B is higher. So as you can see, one thing to notice here is that how I wrote these multiple lines of code in Python. In particular, this print code or print statement belongs to it belongs to this if condition. So any code that part of another block will be always written using a tab. So we have a tab here. So Python follows this strictly, that multiple blocks of code that are under that should be considered under a single module or under one block should be written using same number of tabs. So in this case 1. And if I added another statement here, and let's say A is higher and B is lower. So in this case, when this will be true, it will execute all those statements because Python automatically considered them under the same block, and that's why they have also one tabbing. So let's say if I run this, as you can see, both of these statements got executed. So this is another basic code writing practices in Python. So when we are talking about data types, we already saw numeric data types. We also saw string data types. So this is an example of a string. This is an example of a numeric or integer. Then we also saw an example of floating point data type which has some decimal points or fractional values. But apart from that, there are other high-level Python data types. So they are known as numeric data type, Boolean data type, sequence type, and dictionary. So all these integer, floating, and other numeric types are obviously under the numeric type. Then we have Boolean types. Usually Booleans are always true or false. We also have sequence type. So sequence type are string, list, tuple, and set. For example, we have this variable here which is a string type, but this is basically a sequence of characters, right, or a sequence of letters. That's why this is sequence type. But this can be not only a sequence of letters or characters, it can be sequence of string also. So we might have a list that have multiple strings, and that's also handy when you are writing code in Python. And then there is the dictionary, which is a kind of key value pair, which is also useful in some scenarios. So in the next few examples, I will show some of the common Python data types. And some of the data types are immutable or mutable. So immutable means once you assign a value to the variable, you cannot change this string or these characters. It's the same for numbers. So once you assign 40 to this variable age, you cannot change this 4 or you cannot change this 0 to it. But there are some data types that are mutable, for example list, dictionaries and sets. So in other words, if you have a list of string, let's say you have a list of cities, in that list you can either add a new list or delete an existing city from the list. So we will also see some kind of examples for those. So first of all, the numeric data types. So let's say we have a variable name and a, and we assign a value of 21. We have another variable b which we have assigned another value. So now we have two numeric variables, 21 and 21 assigned to a and 5 assigned to b. What we can do, we can play with some mathematical operations, like we can print the addition of a and b, we can print the subtraction value, we can print the multiplication value, we can print the division value, we can print the remainder value, we can also print what is the power a to the power b, right? So if we print it, it will show you that 21 plus 5 is 26, 21 minus 5 is 16, 21 multiplication is 105, 21 dividing 5 is 4.2, and the remainder is 1. And if you compute 21 times 5, it will give you this value. So these are basic mathematical operations using some numeric data types. There are other useful functions that you can use also in Python, and you can use them using some built-in functions for numeric values. For example, I can have a variable, let's say a negative variable, a negative value is assigned to that variable. So the value of a is now so the value of a is now minus 12.21, and let's say we have another variable, but this time instead of defining a numeric value, we defined it as a string, but inside the string we have this numeric value, but we want to get the numeric value out of it, and we can definitely do that. And if you print b, it will give you a string value. So as you can see, this is a string and this is a numeric value. So now if you want to print the values, let's say the value of a, it was originally a negative value, right? And it was a negative floating point value, but we want the integer value out of that. We can obviously do that. So you can use simply int a, so it will give you only this value out of the whole value. And then we can also what we can do, this b, it was a string variable, right? But we want this numeric value out of it. So, and as you can see, this is a floating point type of numeric value. So definitely, if we want to get the floating point data, we simply use this function float. But if we use the integer of b, it will only give you this 2. And another thing you can do is, out of those floating point number, you can cut the decimal points. For example, we can use the round function. So round of a will be the closest integer value of 12.21. But there is a slight difference between round of a and integer of a. Integer of a, no matter what, you will get only this part, but round of a gives you, if it was 12.6 or 12.7, let's say, it will give you 13 in that way. And you can also get the positive value out of this negative value from the variable a. And to do that, you simply use abs function, so abs. It will give you 12.21 instead of a negative 12.21. So now if I run this again, as you can see, it gives me an error. It comes from this part because it cannot convert this floating point string to an integer, because it was a floating. So what we need to do, we need to use this function first, floating, and then if we want to have the integer value, then it can get the integer. So for now, for this example purpose, maybe I want to see the both value. So if I run this float of b, it will give me 2.25, and then out of those 2.25, if I add another integer command, it will give me 2. So if I run this now, as you can see, the original value of a was minus 12.21. Then if I get the integer of a, it gives only the integer part by discarding the fraction part. And once I ran integer of float of b, that means first I convert this string value to a float, and then I convert this to a integer, so I get only 2. And then this is the same from the previous example. If I round it, it gives me minus 12 again. So in this case, round of a and integer of a is the same, because the decimal point here is less than 0.5. If it was higher than 0.5 or equal to 0.5, it would be 13. And then the absolute value of a is 12.21, because it discard this negative sign. So these are some of the functions that you can use if you want to play with numeric data or string data or floating point data and want to convert from one to another. Now let's move on to some functions related to the string. So let's say I have this variable string a, where I assign congratulations. So one thing you might think about is, like, here we already assigned a value to a, now we are assigning again. another string value to a. So what will happen? So this is another benefit of Python. So the type of the variables are determined at runtime. So you can change the type of variable anytime in the coding. So before it was a numeric type. So if you type here type of a, it will show you a floating point data. A floating point data is also a numeric type. But once you run this code, and now if you type this, if you run this one, or if I copy paste it and run the type, now it's the type of variable a got changed to a string. So this is also very useful feature for Python. So going back to the example, let's say we have this variable a with the string congratulations, and another variable b with another string. So what we can do multiple things out of those two strings. So one is we can concatenate these two strings. So now it's not the same as numeric operator or numeric or mathematical operator, where we using this addition sign we could add two numbers that we did earlier here. In this case, if we add this concatenation sign or addition sign, it will simply join these two strings. And then what we can do also, let's say we have this variable with the value grateful, and if we do it like this, it will simply print the variable v twice. And then what we can do also, we can get an index character or letter from a string. If you remember, we already mentioned that string variables are immutable. You can access each of the each of the letters in the string, but you cannot modify them. So let's say I want to get the fifth index of this variable a. So what it will print is it will print 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sorry, I want the fifth index. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th. So it will print a out of this. And then we can also print a range of characters. So let's say we want to print the letters or characters from 0 until the 7th. So it was until 5, the 6th, 7th. So it will print this character, this string or substring. So it will start from 0 and then take 7 characters. So 0 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, sorry, it will print until congrat. And we can also check, for example, if one string is in another string, or in other words, if b is part of a. So in that we can do that in this way, if b is b in a. And we can also do the other way, the opposite one, b not in a. So in this case, it will check in the first case if grateful is in this is part of this string, and then in the second case it will check if grateful is not part of this string. So now if I run this one, you can see a plus b is simply the concatenation of these two strings. b multiplied 2, it printed b twice. A of 5, so it printed the letter in the 5th index of variable a from 0 to 7, so it started from 0 and then printed 7 characters. B in a, so grateful is not in congratulations, so it's false. B not in a, grateful is not in congratulations, so this one is true. But if we change the string, let's say we also added grateful to a, and if I run this again, then the things got some of the things got changed, because now b in a, so it became true, and b not in a became false, because it's the other way. So these are some of the basic string operations that you might need also when you are playing with the variables or data types. There are some other built-in methods also for the string that are also very useful. For example, if I want to use the same string here, a and b, and for example I can simply take the variable a and then can write capitalize. So what it will do, it will capitalize the whole value of a. I can also, so it will basically capitalize the first character. I can also make a or as all uppercase. I can also make a as title case. I can search a string in another string. So for example, I can search in the b in a, and in this case this function or this command is same as this one. And also what I can do, I can count how many times b exists in a. So a dot count and then b, so I'm counting the number occurrences of b in a. Then I can also check if an string is an alphabetic. So is alpha. If it's a completely alphabetic string, it will send it will give me true. I can also check if this string has any digits. So is digit. So in this case it will give us false. We can also check if a variable or a string is lowercase. The value of a variable is lowercase or not. We can also check other conditions, like if the value of a variable is uppercase, and so on. Sorry, it should be is upper. So in this way there are many useful functions that we can use. And if I run this one, you can see it capitalize the A. So capitalize means it only add the capital letter for the first word and then make everything small. That's also usually do with what we do for sentences in English. It makes everything uppercase, so it became everything uppercase. It makes the title case. So if we had multiple words in this string, what it would do basically, it for all the words it would add the first letter as a capital one. For example, if I make this change here, then it will be congratulations space grateful, but G would be in a capital form. So if I run this one now, as you can see, the results got changed. And then we are finding the B in A. It did not find, because B was with a upper G, but it was with a small g. So if we change it back to a capital G, the result will also change now. So if I execute this one, it found 16 because B started at the 16th index of A. So in this way we can also conclude that B exists in A. So in this case, B in A. So if the value of this command is greater than 0, that means B in A. And then this value shows at which index B started in A. A count B, so it's checking the number of times B appeared in A. So it was, in this case, it was only 1. If B is alphanumeric, yes, B is completely alphanumeric, it does not have any digit. If if B is digit, there is no digit there, so it's false. If B is in lowercase, it's also false because we have a G there. And then if B is uppercase, it's also false because we also have both lowercase and uppercase there mixed. So these are some of the useful string functions that you can use in Python. We can also do some string formatting, and these are also suitable for the variables in Python. So for example, by string formatting, what I mean is you have a variable called David, which has a value called David. His age is, let's say, 35. And what you can do, sorry, you can create a customized message, is that my name is, and there will be a placeholder. So for now, let's make it like this. So my name is David, and I am 35 years old. So what I can do, I can put these variables into my string so that when I print this message, it will automatically get the values of the variables and put them into their corresponding placeholders. So in this case, if I add this name and age, what I also need to do, and this name is a string, right? So it should be a percentage string, and then this age is a numeric, so %d. So now if I print this message, it will take these variables and simply put the values in a sequential order. So name in %s and age in %d. So if I run this one, it will say my name is David, I am 35 years old. But what you can do also, you can organize or make some sequence out of those strings. So for example, let me give you an example. So we have this same variable, name and David, name as David and age as 35, and we want to print the same message, but this time let's say I just put the variables in any order I want, but what I need to do is dot format, and here I need to put these variables, these brackets. So yeah, and in this place we need the name, right? But the name is in another order now. So basically this age is in the 0 index and this name is in 1 index. So I should have 1 here and 0 here. And if I print this now, it will show me the results, the correct results. But if I would do the other way, let's say I have the same name here and age here, and I print it, I could get basically wrong output. So what I wanted to say here is you can control the placeholder or the sequence of strings in your customized output using this kind of numbers. So you just mention which variable index you want at this place. So I was talking about different types of data types in Python, and for example I mentioned there is a string, there is a so sequence type. So for the sequence type we have strings, we have list, we have tuples and sets and so on. So I will show you some of the examples for list, sets and tuples. A list is simply a collection of items. It can be a string items, it can be a integer items or numeric items and so on. So let's say we have 3 strings, LNU, Kalmar and Sweden. So if I run it, I have this list variable that is basically a type of list, and if I run this command it will give me all the items of this list. The interesting thing here is the list is written using these square brackets, opening and closing, and then separated by commas. So this is how you identify if it's a list or set or tuples or so on. And then we also have some functions or some built-in functions for list, same as we did for strings, by which you can control or manipulate the list items. Remember, as we also mentioned, that list is a mutable data type, so you can change the items in the list. So for example, we can take the same list as names, and some of the useful functions include, the most basic ones is the length. So you can check the length or how many items you have in your list. So it will give you basically 3 here. Then you can also add to your list. So if you want to add to your list, then you type names dot append. Let's say you just add English. So if you execute this command, then your list will be extended. So right now it's just returned none, because usually this append method does not give you the output of the operation. It simply says, okay, I have nothing to say, but the operation got successfully executed. But since you got the length of the item of the list, which was 3, and then you added, so basically now it should be print the new length of the variables as 4. So now it was 4, then you added the English and again, and the new length became 4. So you started with 4, then added another item to the list, and the new length became 5. One interesting thing here is, as you already might notice, that you can add duplicate items in the list. So I have basically English twice. So if you print the English names, you can see you have duplicate English, which is not the case for example, for the set data types. Then going back to our methods, for example, we don't want to append anymore the English. You can let's say names, then insert we can add this one and close the bracket. So then there is a little bit difference between append and insert. So appending is if we doing the append, it also adds the string to the list, but if we also insert, it will also add it to the list. But in this case, if we are going to use the insert method, it will fail, and I will tell you why it fails. Because you need 2 arguments for this method, and one of the argument is the placement. So let's say I want this this string to be inserted at the second place, and now if you run this, second means basically 0, 1, 2, second, so this is the index. So Swedish was okay, so it did not. Okay, 0, 1, 2. So it got inserted in the second index in the list. And in this way, using this insert method, you can control basically at which position you want to insert the string. And then I don't want to do the same insert again. Let's move for another function, and let's say you want to remove one of the duplicate items that we had, let's say in this case the English. And what we can do, we can simply say remove names dot remove and English. So what it will do, if I print again, it removes the last occurrence of English. So as you remember, we mentioned list can have duplicate items or duplicate members in the list. So when we are deleting one item or one value, it's the value that was most recently added to the list. So when we remove the English, our second English got deleted. Now if we want to remove again the English, it will delete this English, but we don't want to delete that. List in Python is kind of a stack. So in a stack, whatever items you put first goes to the bottom, and then whatever items you put last is on the top. So let's say it's kind of a set of plates. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plates, and first you added these 3 plates, and then you added Sweden. So basically you added Lineo, Elenio, Kalmar and Sweden, then you added Swedish in the second index, and then you also added English. So now English is top of your stack of your plates, right? So if we want to get the last item in your stack or in your list, in this case, it will give you English because it was on the top. So this was about a list. And then another sequence type was the tuple, and there are some key differences between list and tuple. One of the key differences is that tuple is defined as within first bracket, and then the remaining are same in terms of definitions. So now this name is a tuple. So if you want to see the type of the names, it says tuple. But in this case, if I execute that one, and now if I want to see that type of the names after executing this one, it will say that it's list. But now, since we are in the examples of tuples, I want names to be tuple. So there are other built-in functions for tuples also. Let's say if this was not names, if this was a salary, and then we had numeric values 100, 110, 120 and so on, 118. So what we could do using other functions, for example, we could simply again see the size of the tuple. So in this case it would print 4. Then we could get the minimum of the tuple. In this case it would print 100, and in this way we could also print the maximum of the salary, and in this case 120. So these are some basic functions for tuples. And then we also have set, and one of the difference between set and a list is that in set you cannot have duplicate values. So, and set is also an unordered collection of unique data items separated by comma, but in list the items are listed is using square brackets. In tuples items are enlisted using first bracket, but in set items are listed using curly braces. So this is one of the difference with other data types. There are multiple operations also that you can perform on the list, including union, intersection, difference, and symmetric difference. We can show some of the examples. So if we have, for example, let's say this location variable, and then we can also have this order variable, and let's say we made an order for PyCom, and then PyPy, and then antenna, and then let's say the price. The price was it could be let's say 50 euro. So now we have this location and order date order set, and we want to print the union of this between two sets. So the location union order, it will basically joins the two set. We can also print location intersection, that is AND order. So it will basically get a null set because there is no intersection between these two sets, so it's a empty set. But if we add this LNU in this list, LNU, then it will give LNU. Sorry, to change the variable because the variable got changed, so it gives the LNU. And then we can also get the difference. So location minus difference, so it gives Sweden and Kalmar. So out of these three items in this set, so from these three items, it's subtracting all the items that are in order. So it's subtracting LNU. These are definitely not there. So if I subtract LNU from this list, we have Kalmar and Sweden. And we can also do symmetric difference. So location and order. No, it should be order. So symmetric difference is basically all the items that are uncommon between these two lists. So we have also other functions for set, some useful functions. For example, we can add items to set, we can update an item in the set, we can also discard some of the items from set. For example, we have this location set. So I'm just taking the same set again, and we can print. We can add an item to the set. So let's say again English, and then if we want to print the set, let's say if we want to print the new set, now we have the English in our set. And then let's say we can also update the set. So location dot update, let's say we want to update the LNU with LNU, and then we can print the location again. Okay, so I think there was a syntax error. So basically we are adding this list to this set. What I wanted to do is basically update this set with this new list. So due to the syntax error, it added individual items that I did not want it to add. So maybe let me run this or refresh this variable again. So location, and now I want to add new items from a list to this set. So that's why I had these square brackets, and in this way I can add a list or a tuple to a set. And then we have one more data types that is also very common in Python, that is the dictionary, and probably that's the most interesting data types. Let's say we have a variable called capitals, and dictionary is defined using curly braces, and the capital of Norway is Oslo, then comma, capital of France is Paris, and capital of Sweden is Stockholm. So this is our dictionary, and if you want to print the dictionary, you can see this is our dictionary, and type of capitals will also be the dict type. And if I want to get an items from the dictionary, basically what we need to do is we need to get the dictionary name first and use the get function. And what is the capital of Sweden? So in this case, in this dictionary, Norway is the key and Oslo is the value. France is the key, Paris is the value. So it's a key value pair. It can be a numeric value, it can be a numeric key, and so on, but it should be always a key value pair separated by this colon. So if I want to get the capital of Sweden, so Sweden here is the key, and it will print basically the Stockholm. And what we can also do is to print each of the key value from this dictionary, and for that one, for the first time we will be using the loop. And as I mentioned, loop is used to iterate over a list of items. So here our capitals is a list of key value pairs. So for each key in capitals, so we have our capitals has 3 key: Norway, France and Sweden. So for each key, print, first we want to print the capital, that is the country, and then we want to print their corresponding values. So capitals, and then the key. So now it will print Norway, Oslo, France, Paris, and Sweden, Stockholm, like this. This same thing can be done using this command. So if we take exactly the same code, and instead of capitals within square brackets key, we could do is capital get and then key, like this. So this is equivalent to capital square brackets key. There are some also built-in functions that are useful for the dictionary. For example, if we use the same variable there and we want to print the size of our dictionary, then we can simply print len of capitals. That we had 3 members in our dictionary, that you have these capitals the dictionary, and you want to get the items. So it will simply print all the items for you as a key value pair. So if you don't want to get all the items, you want to get only the keys, so you can simply type capitals and then keys. So it will only print the keys. So our keys was Norway, France and Sweden, and in this way you can also get only the values. So in this case our values were Oslo, Paris and Stockholm. So these are some of the useful functions. You can also update using the update function in a key value using a key value pair. So now coming back to one of the more important, interesting and important part of the Python or in any programming is like decision control. And by decision control we mean conditions. So in general we use if conditions, and the way we write is, let's say we have 2 variables, a equals to 15 and b equals to 12. So just checking if a and b got their value. So a and b got their value, and now we want to write the if condition. I think I already showed an example of if condition. So if a is greater than b, so this is the structure of writing an if condition. So if, and then a space, and then the actual condition, and then a semicolon, and anything under if will be followed by a tab. So you must have a tab if you have statements under if. So let's say in this case, if a is greater than b, we can say a is max, and we can also say b is min. Let's say we might have another condition for this same pair of values, and for that one we have to use Elsif. In short, it's written elif. So elif b is greater than a, then we can print b is max. We can also print a is min. But what if a is not greater than b or b is not greater than a? It can be possible that they are equal, right? Then we can say else. This is the final block. What we can say is a and b are equal. So now if we run this, we will see the first if condition will true, so it will print a is max and b is min. But if we change the value, it will go to the second if condition. So now if I run this, it is printing b is max and a is min. Again, if I change the value and make them equal, it will go to the third block and say a and b are equal. So this is a very simple and a classical way of writing if conditions. Of course, you can add multiple conditions under the same if here. For example, if a is greater than b and b is greater than c, and in this case, let's say you have another variable called c, that is 25. Let's say this is 20. This is 20%. And if a is greater than b and b is greater than c, that means a is max out of these three, right? Else if b is greater than a and b is greater than c also, then b is max. Else c is max. Let's say we are finding the maximum value out of these three. So now if we print this, get this value into variables, and definitely c is max, that means the first two conditions will fail, and that's why this else condition will be true. Here again, as you can see, we got this syntax error because it should be one and not two and. So c is max, and I made this error intentionally just to make you aware that when you are joining these if conditions, and when you have multiple conditions under the same if condition, you have to use only one ampersand, not two. Some languages have this, for example and, but in Python you simply use one ampersand. So if you use here one and try to run it, it will still execute, but I would recommend to use simply as and. So this was the if condition, and now let's go back to another important part of Python, that is loop. And one of the two common loops are while loop and for loop. So let's say so basically the syntax of the while loop is like this: while there will be some conditions, and there will be this colon, also semicolon, and then you will have statements and so on. So inside while you might have also other if conditions and so on. So at the end, when you come up out of the loop, you go back to your initial indentation and print something else, or do something else. So this is the structure of while loop, and usually while loop always starts with a condition checking, which is not the case for loop. Let's give you a small example using while loop. So let's say we have a variable called num. We all have another variable called count. We have another variable called total. So the goal is it will take an input from the user, let's say a number, and then print the total starting from 1 up to that number. So it will take from the user this num value, then it will iterate using this while loop, and finally it will save that value to the total and print this value. So to do that, while the num value should be always a positive one, so it should be either 1 0 or greater. So the value of the num will be received from the users, and it will be an integer number, definitely. So to get the value from the user, we can use this function called input, and let's say we can ask the user enter a number, this message, and user will enter a number, and if this number is greater than 0, then what we also can do, maybe I can slightly change the example. So we will take from the users a list of numbers and then just sum up those list of numbers instead of asking user to give only one input. So that's why our input function is inside the while loop, and we can say also to the user that enter 0 to exit. So when the user will put 0, that means the user input is finished and it will print the output. And this will also count how many input the user provided and calculate the total of the numbers. And finally, it will print how many inputs. Sorry, it should not be in the bracket. How many input and what was the total of that input, and let's say what was the what is the average. Also we can print the average of the numbers that user entered. So what it will do, it will continue the loop as long as the user provide 0, and when user provides 0, it will exit the loop. Right? So let's run this program. 2 3 5 7 8 1 0. So when I entered 0, it did not stop. Why? Because I added this equal sign here. So the loop will continue as long as the num is greater than 0. If it's equal to 0, it will still continue. So I run this part again. Okay, I think the other module did not finish. So okay. Okay, the count was 0, so num was also 0. So maybe what I can do is start from the counter 1. So now it should work. So I will continue the numbers, and as soon as the user puts 0, it get out of the loop. So I got 7 numbers, total was 24, and this was the average. So this is one example of how you can write a simple while loop. So while space, a condition, and then semicolon, and then the rest will follow. I will not go with the example of the for loop. I will just give you the format here. So the for loop will look like this. For x in let's say x, and then you do whatever you want. So let's say print something. So in this case, in this example, basically this larger x, it can be a list, it can be a set, it can be a dictionary, it can be a tuple, and so on. So let's say it can be a simple list of items like this. And when you are printing, when you are iterating over this list, basically this small x represents each of the item in the larger x. So if you simply print x, it will print all these numbers. So if I execute this, as you can see, 1 2 3 and 5. So this is the very basic structure of for loop, where you write the keyword, for keyword in Python, then space, then the variable name. In this case, this variable name represents each of the items in this list, in, and then your main item, main list or set. These variables or these items or list, you can also have you can change them, and you can have your own customized range. For example, you can write for x in range 1 to 10. In this case, x is still the variable, and it will get the value from 1 until 10. And sorry, it's basically should be this first bracket. And now if you print the x, basically it will print from 1 to 10. Again, there was, I think it will be this column, so it will print now 1 until 9, basically, not 10. So when it's 10, it will end up it will finish the loop. So there is a internally there is a check that if x equals to 1, so this is the maximum limit and this is the minimum limit. So if x is equal to 1, print x. If x is equal to 2, print x. If x is equal to 3, print x. But before printing, it's also internally checking if x is less than 10. So this is the maximum limit. So it's checking if x equals to 2 and is it less than 10? Yes, then print x. When it comes to 10, it says x equals to 10. If x is less than 10, no, then it went out of the loop. So it prints from 1 to 9. In this way, you can also loop through the dictionaries, as I mentioned earlier, and not only dictionaries, you can loop through tuples, sets, and so on. So user-defined functions. Until now, we showed a number of examples of built-in functions, but user-defined functions can also useful if you want to write your own function. And the format of writing user-defined function is definition. So you always need to write def and then your function name, let's say result, and your user-defined function can have parameters or values that you want to use inside that function. Let's say we have 3 scores, or let's say 2 scores, so score 1 and score 2. You always need this semicolon, and your total value is score 1 plus score 2, and then you are checking if total is greater than 50. I'm always writing in my Java style conditions. Then you simply print pass, else simply print fail. So let's say our result method takes 2 input and add them and check if you have passed or failed based on the scores. But we want to use that method also, right, that we defined. And let's say we have a course called IoT, and we want to take input from the user for those course. So we take input and score for IoT. This is score 1. We might have another course, let's say math, and we can copy paste this score for math, and then we can call the method result method with IoT and math. So here what we are doing, we are calling that method that we defined here using these two numbers, these two scores on this IoT course and math course. So when we write like this, result IoT math, what it will do, it will go there and use this value of IoT and math for score 1 and score 2, and it simply prints if you pass or fail based on the scores that you provided as the input here. So when you run it, it asks for the score for your IoT course and then for your mathematics course, and it says you are passed. And if you take the score for IoT and in math you got 48, let's say, and it you are still pass because it's saying the total is greater than 50, but I want to see if the average is greater than 50. So for that one I just need to divide it by 2, and now if I give the same score again, 40 and 48, it will say I failed because the average is not greater than 50. But what I wanted to show here is a basic definition of user-defined function. So you use the keyword def space function name, and if you have any parameter, list them here that you will use inside the function, and then a semicolon at the end, and you just call this function or invoke this function in your program using this way. Now go back to the class. That is another important and useful feature for Python, since Python is also object-oriented programming language. In Python, class is defined using the keyword called class. So let's say we have a person class, so we write like this: class space class name and then semicolon, and let's say we want to do something here, and one of the thing is a class can have a method also. So let's say I want to display the info of that person. So display info, and in the display info method I have to put a semicolon. I want to print the name and age, and the question is where this name and age is coming from, and the answer is, so they should be coming from either from your main function or from the class itself. And if you want to set it from the class itself, then what you need to do is have two more methods. So you are setting the name. I will come to another point soon, and name equals to name, and then you also need to define set the age. age equals to age. And now in your main method, so you have this person, right? This is a class, and we also mentioned that Python is a object-oriented language. So we have to create an object of this class. That is, let's say person1 equals to person. So it will create an object of that person class and assign this to p1. So this here is, in this case, p1 is also an variable, but this is an object type variable. So I want to set the name of that person. So set name, let's say it was, I can send a string, and p1 set age, let's say any age that I prefer, 40. And then I have this method for this class, like display info. So this class should display my name and age when I call this method. But if I run this now, I was expecting that I will see my name and my age, but it will not show up. So there are multiple reasons. Why? First of all, when we are initializing this class or creating this object, this class is, or this object is not initialized. And each of the classes should always be initialized using this init method. In other words, or in object-oriented programming, this is known as constructor. And this constructor or this class has two variables, right? Okay, let me do it like this. So two variables, name and age. Age, I don't know, it can be 0 for now, and name, just to initialize, I say none. But this will still not work. As you can see, it still has the problem. And the problem comes here is because when I'm initializing and when I'm assigning the values, there should be an object for that class, and that object is the self object. Basically, this, when I use the self.name or self.object age, it will always refer to the name variable and age variable for that class. So for all the cases, even if I am displaying the info, I should pass this object as a parameter to this method, so it knows that this age and this name are the variables of this self object. And when I'm also setting the names and the age, I should also pass the object from which it will get the name and age, and this is setting the name and age also to the self object or to the variables that are in that object. So in that case, initially when I'm creating the object here, it was assigned 0 and none, but now after calling this method, set name and set age, it will overwrite this value with this Francis and 40. And interestingly, you will see that now everything will work. So when I am displaying the info, the age of the name was set as Francis and the age was set as 40. I don't know why in this case it was okay, so it should be basically not a string, it should be an integer, so that's why age is still showing 35. Maybe I had age variables before that was set as 35, so it is still getting the same variable name, but it should add the age for this object. I also initialized here. Okay, let me stop the kernel and run it again. Okay, but it's still for showing for 35. So perhaps I had 35 before somewhere as age. Yes, so it was getting it's still getting this value, but maybe the constructor is not setting up. Set age. Oh, okay, so that was the issue. So I should have set the age here. Now it should say set 40. Yeah, sometimes these small errors make your life difficult. Anyway, so this was the goal that I wanted to show, the basic use of a class in Python. And one final thing that I want to show you is working with files in Python. So let's say you want to create a file and you want to either read or write to that file, and in Python it is done in this simple way. So let's say this is a file object, so I'm opening a file under my user. So users, if my username, let's say documents and test.txt, and I want to open the file in the write mode, and then I can write basically anything to that file. Welcome to LNU, and what I have to do is simply close the file after I am done. So if I execute this, there should be a file in this location, in this name, and in that file we should have welcome to LNU. So let's check that. Documents, and then you can see that I have this text file and it has this welcome to LNU text that I just wrote, and this should be also as simple as that. And you can also of course open the files for many other purpose. So if you want to read the file, just you have to use here R instead of W, and then there are also some changes that you need to make. So for example, if you want to read a file, you just open this same file using R, and then instead of f.write, you just simply read line, And if you use the read line, what it will do, it will simply read the first line. So it will, okay, it's open the, okay, it should return in a variable. So str, so it reads the first line and return, or maybe we can simply print that one also. So str, so basically it will print welcome to LNU string that we already had. What you can do also, you can open the same file to add to append. So for example, in this case a plus, so it will open the same file and append something. So if I write something in the file, let's say with a new line, it was welcome to LNU, now welcome to IoT course, and then I just close it. So if I run this one, it appended the file, and if I want to read the file again, so so if I read it again, it will again print welcome to LNU, because read line method only read just one line, and if we want to read all the lines in the file, so we add this welcome to IoT course, and there was welcome to LNU before. So if we want to read all the lines, what you need to do is read the first line and then have this while loop, or this condition, while our str, so this is our line that we are reading, is not equals to and empty character, or end of file basically. So while is not equals to end of file or empty character, we print all the lines, and while we also print the lines, we continue reading the next line. So basically now if we execute this command, it will print both a welcome to LNU and welcome to IoT course, and this is the expected outcome that we have. So I think that's all what I wanted to show you for this basic Python. And also for this Python exercise, or for this Python tutorial, there will be a short quiz that will be published, and participation in this short quiz on Python is also mandatory. So details on this quiz will also be published on my Moodle, how you can participate on the quiz. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, although it's a bit long, but I wanted to show all the basics to get started programming in Python. And if you have any questions, feel free to discuss on the Slack. Thank you very much.